Hello everybody, today's lecture is going to be about chapter 4 of the module guide. We are going to be discussing parliamentary sovereignty as a constitutional principle, separation of powers, as well as rule of law. So parliamentary sovereignty is one of the most important constitutional principles of the UK's legal system. The name suggests the parliamentary sovereignty refers to the supremacy of the parliament, which in other words means that the parliament has the authority and is the highest authority to make, change or repeal any law whatsoever. There are two limbs to the concept of parliamentary sovereignty. The first one being that the parliament can make, change or repeal any law, and the negative limb being that no other member of the legal system can challenge the act of parliament. Then there are a few case law examples that you students should consider while attempting an answer on the parliamentary sovereignty. The other constitutional principle is the separation of powers. Separation of powers refers to the independence or the impartiality of the three limbs of the legal system. The three limbs are the legislature, which is the parliament, the executive, which is the government, and the judiciary, which is the court system. So these are the three main bodies of the legal system, and all of these three bodies cannot share any power altogether. They are supposed to remain independent from one another. Before CRA 2005, which is also known as the Constitutional Reform Act, the Lord Chancellor, who used to be the head of the Parliament, was also the head of the judiciary. This was undermining the principle of separation of power, which is why CRA 2005 brought some very important changes, and the major change, the most important change, was the fact that Lord Chancellor was now considered the head of Parliament only, and Lord Chief Justice was introduced as the new head of the judiciary. To uphold or to make sure that the separation of powers is in place, the principle of separation of powers is in place, we need to ensure that there is judicial independence. Judicial independence can be of two kinds: individual judicial independence and institutional judicial independence. When we talk about individual judicial independence, we are referring to the judiciary, the judges on the individual level being independent. They do not have any undue influence from any outside member of the judiciary. On the other hand, the institutional judicial independence refers to the fact that the judiciary should be independent and it should not have any undue influence from any of the other members of the legal society. For example, before CRA 2005, like I said, parliamentary head Lord Chancellor was also the head of the judiciary. This was undermining the institutional judicial independence. However, if the judge, specifically one single judge, is friends with someone whose case he is handling, then that is against the individual judicial independence. Judicial independence is very important for the constitutional principle of separation of powers. Then we moved on to understand the rule of law. The first thing we talked about was the fact that the rule of law cannot be defined specifically because it is very vast. It can cover a lot of aspects. However, largely there are two categories of the rule of law. The first one being the content-free approach, which is also known as the descriptive approach. The other one being the content-rich approach, also known as the prescriptive approach. The content-free approach refers to the definition of rule of law as being limited to what the law actually is currently. For example, A.V. Dicey brought 3 points about in the pursuit of defining the content-free approach of the rule of law, in which he talked about the fact that the law should be, or law is, designed in a manner that nobody can be punished or penalized for the breach of law unless they have been given a proper chance to take the matter to the court, or their actions have been taken to the trial. The other one is, out of the 3 points, the second point the A.V. Dicey made for the content-free approach was that nobody is above the law, and the third point was that the constitutional principles, for example, the separation of powers and the parliamentary sovereignty, are a product of the common law. Common law refers to the court, judge-made law. On the other hand, Lord Bingham talked about the content-rich approach. Content-rich approach also considers the substance and form and procedure of the law when we talk about the definition of the rule of law. in light of the content-rich approach. So Bingham is one of the most important persons who laid out 8 essential ingredients of the rule of law in line with the content-rich approach. And when we talk about content-rich, it is prescriptive. It basically talks about what the law should be or what the law ought to be. For example, the law should be having fundamental human rights taken into consideration when governing people's actions. Then that's a part of the rule of law, which falls under the heading of content-rich approach. Then we talked about what is the importance of the rule of law. This is where the World Justice Project came into play. World Justice Project is an intergovernmental institution which annually publishes the Rule of Law Index, and upon conducting survey on around 126 countries, it ranks the countries on the basis of how good or how well they implement the rule of law in their legal system. The World Justice Project has indicated that the better the rule of law, the better it is for the society, because it leads to lesser criminal violence, better medical facilities, lesser corruption, and all of these, all the other linked benefits. Apart from that, we talked about, let me see, the independence of judiciary, and we have already discussed that. So this is what chapter 4 was about, and a detailed reading of the guide is very highly recommended for better understanding. Thank you.